Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri And Lauren, what is killing me today is we are taking a gamble by recording this on Tuesday afternoon because God only knows what will happen by the time it actually comes out.
It's lit.
Yeah, the Panthers started out free agency with a frenzy. Even if you didn't love the names they got, I loved that they were very active. I loved that they were not waiting to catch deals. They had guys in mind that they wanted. We're going to jump all around, but just real quick, just your initial impressions on day one and now the fallout here in day two. As you know, you got to find that money somewhere, and apparently it starts with Miles Sanders.
Money isn't real, Demetri. So that's fine. No, I mean, overall, I would say, on the whole, I am pleased.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, of the activity. And look, I'll be honest, when I was looking at this draft, in spite of there being a plethora of talented edge rushers available and stuff like that, I'll be honest, I was looking at the draft and I was a little bit like, okay, so the Panthers might get stuck with a dude who was a combine wonder and barely had any stats. I'm just not sure how I'm feeling about that as a fix-it, just being honest. I do see you go down any mock draft and you look at the first round and it's edge. But I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know that I'm looking at a lot of these guys and thinking oh, that's the next, the next coming of whatever.
And you always have to think about the leap, right, from college to the pros, because I'll tell you all day long, I think James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee is awesome, but he's, by NFL standards, he's pretty small, and we already went through that at one position. Do we want to go through it at another? There's
a problem. There's a problem with almost everybody that the Panthers could potentially get. And so it's been making my tummy feel a little queasy. That and probably millions of other things. Right. But it's just looking at that and thinking about it. And it's well, I don't know. What do they do? And then you look at the DBs and you're like, yeah, you could probably get. So again, I'm glad that they've been active in that way. That being said, the JayceeHorn deal almost made me spit out a drink, literally. I was excuse me?
Yeah, let's start there. The extension gets done. 4 years for between 100 and 108 million based on incentives. $70 million of that is guaranteed. And when the deal was announced, you texted me that you were glad that the Horn deal was done, but disappointed because you didn't think it meant we were going to do anything else. And that is where we get to this, does money mean anything anymore in the NFL?
I mean, I thought there was a salary cap problem. I guess, maybe.
I've been saying it all along, right? It's not a problem, but there wasn't a plethora of money that if you don't understand the cap, you knew this didn't mean anything. I was flabbergasted by the amount, first of all.
I think that's the other part of it for me is look, I'm not saying I don't believe in paying defensive backs. That would be silly.
Yeah.
However, as much as I loved Josh Norman, for example, when the Panthers let him walk, I was good.
Yeah.
And not because I didn't love him. I did. And if they had paid him, I honestly would have been also probably I would have said okay, we can live with this. I love Josh, what he's done here. He's earned it, blah, blah, blah. But you see what happened after for the most part. Correct me if I'm misremembering, but he wasn't.
I think he had one above average season at Washington, but the fall off was fast. That's for sure.
And he had put way more down in terms of tangible, okay, this is number one DB type of guy, energy and production. That that's the highest paid DB in the league. That's a record-setting contract.
As I say, in league history, I think that when he is on the field, JayceeHorn is
very good.
I think he's very much staked his claim that you can perform well. We're still waiting to see if you can win, but you can have a decent team with him as your number one DB. They don't call them
DB wins, do they?
It's very fair. You can be very good with him as your top defensive back. But you cannot dismiss that he's played 37 games when he's been on the roster for 68. That's huge, right?
I think I told you too. My number one issue with Dan Morgan has
Mm-hmm.
always been that I do genuinely think, and I get why, that he has somewhat of an affinity for guys that have a little bit of an injury history.
Sure.
And he's willing to give them a little more leeway. Like, at the end of the day, I get it, and I would rather this team be nicer to those people than not. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
do, but at the same time, like, as a fan, I do look at it and go, is this the best, like, long-term business decision? And I know the injuries have all been different, to be fair to
Mm-hmm.
JC. Like, it's not like he has like this one nagging thing that's keeping him out over and over again, or like an ACL or anything. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like that. But at the same time, like you said, like, he hasn't been able to stay on the field except for last year.
Yeah,
And
I guess you really have to trust that they really are comfortable with where his health is. Like Dan Morgan has said, like, I mean, at this point, what reason is there not to take that at face value? I do think it is fair. I think it is crazy to think you would have gotten him for anything less than 20 million a year. I don't think 25 was necessary. I don't think you had to set a record for a dude
that's what I'm saying.
like
Yeah, that
JC
was
Horn.
also part of it.
So Matthew Schmidt, who covers the Panthers for SI, wrote that as the day went on, day one of free agency, the Horn deal looked worse and worse because of what guys were signing for. And I want to give you some of the examples he cites, and you tell me, like, I think this is unfair because I think Horn,
Yeah.
when healthy, is in a very different class from these guys. But Byron Murphy, 3 years, 66 million. So about let's go by average annual, 22 million a year. Charvarius Ward, 20 million a year. Paulson Adebo, 18 million a year. DJ Reed, an absolute bargain, 3 years, $8 million total. Like, that's not the
What?
space you're played in with. I mean, at least that's what Matthew wrote.
Good
That's not the
Lord.
space you're playing in with JayceeHorn.
And that's kind of my issue, right? Is like, yeah, like maybe we're splitting hairs for 5 million, but like that adds up. And it's like,
For sure.
why is that? Like, what has he done to show
Hey,
that he's the best cornerback in the league?
where
right
did
now?
they just find that extra 5 million? By cutting Miles Sanders. Like, I'm not saying because you went to 25 instead of 20, that's why Sanders gets cut. He was going to get cut no matter what, but
Yes.
that's the kind of guy you could get for 5 million. And if he's healthy, Sanders can contribute, right? Like, or I should say, you would expect that Sanders could contribute if he was healthy. On the other end of the health spectrum, you have Trayvon Morin, 3 years, 51 million. They sign him away from Las Vegas. What I say on the other end of the health spectrum, this dude has missed a total of 2 games in his 4 years in the league. He is coming off of what is undoubtedly his best season, posting career highs in tackles, pass breakups, and stuffs. They also get that new deal done for Mike Jackson. So, Lauren, I guess we have to ask, is the secondary fixed now?
Well, let's not go crazy, Demetri. Because so I have 2 concerns. My primary one is depth, though. Like,
Mhm.
that's really the main one. Is depth, because like we saw a lot of DBs get hurt last year. Now,
For sure.
strangely, one of them was not JayceeHorn. So like, good for him. it got him paid. Like, hey, good. But at the same time, it's like, okay, and I get, like, I get why they did it a little bit too, because like, with as badly as the draft has gone for this team in recent years, you want one of your guys to have worked out. And when someone's
Mhm.
played well for you, you want to be able to reward that, and you want to show that you're rewarding that. I understand all of that. So yeah, but like, yeah, the depth is still a concern. They can continue to address that, but even the depth the Panthers had last year at DB, to me, was very questionable at best.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of guys that you were like, what? Who exactly is that? And what? He played where? Oh
Yeah.
no. It was that kind of a situation. And so like, yeah, I think you're gonna have to do more than just that. But at the same time, and I guess with Horn, it's like, okay, we could not re-sign Horn, and then what do we do?
Right.
And that's a legitimate question, because you're gonna have to, if you want someone as good as that, you're gonna have to probably either draft that guy at 8 or pay someone that much. So
and so let's circle back to what you talked about with even though there are a whole lot of very good pass rushers in this draft, can you get someone that is number 8 talent sitting at number 8? And so that's where I wonder, what do all of these signings now do to their needs in the draft?
Right.
Could they go away from pass rusher? Maybe. I mean, Will Johnson from Michigan will probably be there. It's a guy that's drawn comparisons to Pat Surtain. I mean, that's pretty damn good. The problem is he is not healthy enough to even participate in his pro day. So do you feel good about that
Absolutely not. Well, no,
necessarily?
but that Dan Morgan, probably his ears just perked up.
You're
Oh,
right.
he's not healthy enough to be at his pro day. Shoot him
So-
up the draft board. I'm
So then
kidding,
here's
sort of.
here's my next question. I've told you over and over again, I like Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, who will probably be there
Yeah.
in the second round at 57. I think he'd be ready to play as a, if not a starter, a very heavy contributor right away. So let's say that's what they have their eye on. Does that mean at number 8, there's a chance that all of the talk about Tet McMillan out of Arizona, or the tight end out of Penn State, whose name escapes me at the moment, Tyler Warren, does that mean that's in play now?
I saw a story recently about like how the Panthers tight end room sucks. And I was like, I don't really see that to me, but maybe that's just me thinking very highly of JT Sanders in what he showed us.
I think both you and I have projected forward on what we expect from
Yes.
Sanders in a way most people are not doing. Because I'm with you.
Yes.
I think Sanders is going to be a very good tight end in this league.
Really good. Yes. And so like that's part of it for me. And I also think Trimble is very good at what he does.
Mhm.
You know, like, and it's not like he has stone hands. Like he can catch too if you need him to.
Look,
So
let's put him in the same boat as Adam Thielen. That's a dude that
Yeah.
Bryce seems to have a connection with. I mean,
Yes.
Bryce throws to him way more than I'm comfortable Bryce throwing to him, but Bryce seems to know where that dude's going to be all the time.
But Tet, you want your girl to explode a little bit. Tet McMillan, if Tet McMillan fell to this team and they took him, I'd be over the moon excited.
Really?
Yes. I think he's great.
I mean, I think that he is. So I've been saying this. I think Tet has all of the physical tools. I think Luther Burden is the better of the two top receivers
Fair.
in terms of skill. However, if you're right about XL and you expect him to come along and James Coker keeps developing as well, maybe you'd rather have the big physical dude than another, 6 foot, 6'1" super skill guy.
That's fair too. But I this is the moves that they were making today, just before we started recording this, did lead me to sort of wonder, like, okay, I wonder with all of these signings they're doing on defense, a lot of which I thought they would address more in the draft than in free agency because of the cap situation. Because of that, like, is it possible they go away from that, like you're saying? Like, and I did not think that was possible a week ago, obviously, and now I'm starting to wonder.
Let's talk about that because certainly what we ended up with, I think, were a lot of guys that are going to play a lot of snaps, but probably not get a lot of starts across the offensive line, across the defensive line. So we have to begin by asking, what the hell happened with Milton Williams? Because it is not Panthers fans that thought this was a done deal. It is not the Panthers that thought this was a done deal.
No.
The national media thought this was a done deal, that Milton Williams was on his way to Charlotte. And an hour later, it is being reported that he has agreed to terms with the New England Patriots. I will tell you what has been reported of what happened, but tell me your reaction from, we might have just gotten the best player available in free agency, to here we are again.
Well, my initial reaction was actually, wow, it's the first time someone's ever moved. Instead of moving to North Carolina, they moved to, usually the Boston people would move here and not vice versa. That was my initial like a-hole reaction to that. Or certainly to Arizona as well. They would move from Boston to Arizona and not. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's true. Like, who plays in Philadelphia and goes, not cold enough?
Right. Like, it'd be like going to Buffalo from there. That's the only place worse I can think of that you'd be like, it's not, I'd like more snow. Like, I would like to play in more blizzards. I miss that. Yeah, I don't, obviously that's probably not why he chose, or else he wouldn't be there. And I don't know. I mean, is the situation that much better there than I don't know.
I'm
It
not
doesn't
sure
seem
it
like
is,
it's
although
that much better.
yeah, I mean, like, you gotta give them this. They spent a lot of money yesterday. Like, they were really
Yeah.
active on the free agency front. The report from Dan Graziano of ESPN is that Milton Williams was negotiating with the Panthers and the Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals simultaneously. Now, does that mean that the Patriots got to the finish line before anyone else? Does that mean that the Patriots threw a number that the other two teams were not willing to? I don't know, but I would really love to know what happened. Like, or I'm sorry, not I would love to know what happened. I would assume it is
Mm.
closer to the Patriots said, what did the Panthers offer? Here's another X amount. Because the way it was reported that it was a done deal for Carolina and suddenly it wasn't tells me that the Patriots got like a one last chance kind of offer in there.
I guess, but at the end of the day, you think he would go back and say like, "Hey, this is what I got offered," and see if someone would top it, because
Yeah.
that's what I would do. Maybe he did do that, and they were like,
Yeah.
"No, we're good, we're out." Because we got to re-sign JayceeHorn,
Right.
in which case there goes my tummy again.
Well, I mean,
But
it is also a possibility. And I mean, I just think you have to allow for this being a possibility that maybe he had a deal done with the Patriots, the Panthers topped it, and then the Patriots were willing to go higher, and his agent told him, like, you can't do this again. Like, if the Patriots went higher, you got to go to the Patriots now, or you really want to be a Panther, one way or the other. Like, it's very possible somebody that does this all day, every day, told him it's time to stop playing one off the other and make a decision.
yeah, maybe so. I mean, look, we've talked about this. I'm used to people not picking to play here.
Yeah.
So like I have no more feelings left on that. Like I'm not going to be mad. Although
It is
I
what makes the
yeah.
Mooring signing such a pleasant surprise because he was one of the two top tier
Yes.
safeties, and I thought for sure he would pick someone that was like a step away from the Super Bowl before the Panthers.
Yeah, I always am of the mentality, which is probably not healthy on my part. Whenever anyone picks us, I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much. You love us. Y'all, thank you. But when they don't, I'm like, I understand.
Right.
Especially now with like the Tepper situation and being what it is and everything. Like, at least I have that as an excuse instead of just like they look at this area or like this state or whatever, and they're just like, who wants that? Who wants that joke of a team? Instead, they probably look at the owner and they're like, "Ooh, who wants that?" But
Yeah.
which I understand. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like I get what you're saying about like the D line and whatever. But I mean, it still was important to me because they were adding some depth there, which they had zero of last year. And so like I'm still happy with what they're doing there. I just don't know, like. Don't you? I mean, okay, you'll have to explain the cap like I'm 5. So I mean, when they sign when they sign draft picks, that counts. So
Yes.
I mean, again, is money just not real? Do they pay do they take a hit? Like what's
It's a really good question. And this is the thing that I've been trying to get answered that I don't understand. When the report is that the Panthers have 30 million under the cap, does that exclude the 12 million you have to set aside for rookies? And granted, it may not be exactly 12 million. I've just always heard that you budget $12 million for your rookie class against
I
the
would
cap.
imagine whatever, this is a guess on my part.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I would imagine that whatever pops up on most of those like cap sites or whatever of like available money, and maybe I'm wrong, but I would guess that that's usually your available money. Like I would imagine they don't like just because then you would have to have that money. Do they have that money set aside at all times? I mean,
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I kind of wonder if that is what pushes people over the cap when, you see those projections like right now. I just don't know what the answer to that is. A very interesting thing happened in free agency yesterday. So even after they don't get Milton Williams, there is still a real focus on building up this defensive line, particularly in the middle. Trayshawn Wharton comes over from the Chiefs on a $54 million deal. Bobby Brown III, it is his prerogative to come to the Carolina Panthers. Yep, I did it. He gets a 3-year deal worth $21 million. We have to ask what this means for DerrickBrown. I mean, I don't think Bobby Brown III is looked at as anything other than depth, but Trayshawn Wharton could be a starter.
Well, I would hope so.
at
No,
that number.
like,
Yeah.
so that's like when you were telling me like, oh, the D-line signings were like mostly depth. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That one better not be, considering the price tag I saw by it. That's not a depth number of, and honestly, even the 21 is pretty for 3 is like pretty a lot for a guy that you don't want to have starting either, or at
I
least
mean,
could
it's
start.
like the thing we got to keep telling ourselves is like with the cap going up, that means salaries go up. Who is it
Yeah.
I saw yesterday? Oh, it was Zach Wilson signed with the Dolphins 1 year, almost $7 million. I mean, so
Yeah, that makes sense though.
yeah, but when you look at like you and I just a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about $6 million a year for Andy. Is like, ooh, is that how you want to invest in a backup quarterback? Like, maybe we just don't understand the economics of the league this year.
Well, that's not the only thing I don't understand the
Fair.
economics of. So it's fine. But like, yeah, I mean, I just yeah, I liked the signings from what I understand of them. Like I like the guys. Like it's good.
Mhm.
It's good to have them. I'm glad they're addressing it. But yeah, the DerrickBrown question is certainly a question at this point, because I liked Derrick very much. I still like Derrick. Like I know he got hurt last year, but that was just 1 year. And it would be surprising to me if like 1 year of being hurt for DerrickBrown was enough for Dan Morgan to be like, no. And then like JayceeHorn can not play for the better part of like 4 years and get a record contract like that. Because like if you asked me before, I mean, if you asked me like without position need coming into it, like who the player is that I would rather keep of the two of them, I would,
Mhm.
without position needs coming into play, I would have probably said DerrickBrown.
Yeah, I mean, look, David Newton at ESPN seems to think that DerrickBrown is going to keep his job, that Wharton is going to be kicked to the outside as
Okay.
a defensive end. I
Okay.
mean, okay, like maybe these guys that are edge rushers now we have to think about as linebackers. I don't understand the difference between defensive end and an edge rusher at this point. In
Yeah,
terms,
it looks like some of them are like listed as that in the
yeah,
mock drafts I saw. There were just so many. It was like edge, 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 edge. And I think some of the guys were linebackers or whatever, but it was like, oh, okay.
yeah. I mean
Guess it depends
can
on your scheme a little bit too.
it does. I kind of wondered though, is there maybe a case to be made for looking at a possible 4-3, like a move to a 4-3 instead? And I'm not saying what they
Yeah.
should or shouldn't do. I'm saying, given the way the roster is constructed right now, there's a lot more depth on the line than at linebacker.
Listen, this isn't me trying to oversimplify the game of football. Okay. However, watching quarterbacks of varying skill levels essentially having the time to literally make a sandwich
Yeah.
whilst in the pocket surveying for an open receiver last year. Like it was unbelievable at times the amount of time that they would have. I do when you ask me, would you like to have an extra person at the line of scrimmage to rush said passer? My answer, my reflex animal response is like, yes, please. Oh God, someone help and make this easier because we can't get there. But I know it's not that simple, and you can create pass rush other ways. And I understand all
Well,
that, but
let me ask you this. Is there a possibility that the Panthers are not looking to trade Brown, but looking to make him not a necessity? If they have to rework and there's
yeah,
a standoff, they could move on from him. If they have to cut, they could move on from him and not like
yeah,
I don't think Wharton for Brown is a 1-for-1 necessarily.
right,
I
no.
mean, assuming Brown is healthy, but they suddenly have a very long depth chart at defensive tackle that they didn't have this time last week.
Well,
I
and
just
Lord knows they need it, to be
yeah.
honest. So, because like a lot of people will tell you that everything starts there with your
Yep.
defense. Because if you don't have good defensive tackles, you're gonna really struggle.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah, I mean,
in
Dan
all
Morgan has
facets.
said that he believes that was the secondary's biggest problem last year is
Yep,
that those receivers and quarterbacks had all the time in the world to do whatever they want. Like there was no rush to get the ball out of the
literally.
quarterback's hand
Nope.
quickly. Right. I want to wrap up on this. Panthers clearly focused on that pass rush. Like Dan Morgan clearly understood the assignment, received all the memos that the pass rush has to be fixed. You can see that in signing PatrickJones II, 2 years, $20 million for the outside linebacker from Minnesota. Lauren, what I find interesting is I saw Cam Wolfe say this on the NFL Network, and he's not the only person I've heard say this. It is widely understood around the league that the Panthers are not done in free agency yet.
Yeah.
What more is
Listen.
there to do when you consider that you still have the draft to get through?
I mean, I suppose a secondary running back wouldn't be the worst thing to address in free agency if you can get a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't maybe a tight end potentially, even though again, tight end is something they say is pretty prevalent in this draft as well.
I would say based on what it is we have seen doled out in terms of contracts, I think my desire for a veteran primary X type wide receiver is probably unrealistic, but I also would
for
not have
free
thought,
agency, I think so. Yeah,
but
that's the
also
only
I
thing.
would not have thought we had the money to give JayceeHorn that we did. Now, obviously, you can't do both.
Money
I'm
is made
guessing.
up, so it's fine. Like I said,
Right.
money is not real.
My son asked me yesterday, what would happen if the Panthers did not get under the salary cap and still showed up to play the game, took the field, like, did take the, what could the NFL realistically do? And Lord, we might be about to find out.
I mean, you know what? It's all the rage nowadays to just do whatever you want without
That's
regards for what you're allegedly supposed to be doing in rules.
Yeah.
So, why not? Just try it. Who says no?
Yeah. Patrick
Roger
Jones,
Goodell?
Patrick Jones II, 2 years, $20 million. This is a steal. I mean, this is a good player at a favorable rate and probably the top of the pass rush depth chart right now, at least at that stand-up, outside linebacker position, because, your other options are Wanham and Clowney, and they both flashed for sure. But I think you are signing Jones to be the dude, at least on one side. Do you draft the other? Do you, do you rotate between Clowney and Wanham? I don't know, but
I think if you're going to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, but you found your primary pass rusher, at least for this year, on what is, at least right now, a deal.
Yeah, and I think again, it's one of those things where you probably the question is, do you try to get a guy at a deal price in free agency? Because again, even though money seems to be not a real thing, you do, I think, have to think about that. And so you're not going to be able to get one of the best pass rushers in the league at a premium price. That's not going to happen. And so, because you don't have any money left, but at the same time, could you get someone that maybe has something working against them in some way, but they're actually really talented or whatever it is, or even just somebody to take a little bit of a chance on? I mean, let's be real. Jadeveon Clowney was a little bit of a risk for sure to take, because he could have just come in and just completely sucked, which I was worried about, and he didn't. And that's great. But you, maybe you're better off having at least one veteran guy at a little bit of a cheaper price to go alongside him that could be okay. And then maybe you feel more comfortable taking a chance in the draft on a pass rusher that you really love. And like we talked about, maybe at 8, you just trade down. Maybe you just trade down and wait for an edge rusher because there'll be a lot of them, and probably some that the Panthers even like a little bit, but maybe you don't feel as badly about taking a guy a little later on in the draft, and then you're able to have some draft capital. The Panthers finally have draft picks again. It's beautiful. It's wonderful.
It's interesting. It's going to be really interesting as we get closer to the draft and pictures start to become a little more clear. If Jalen Walker is who you like because you like the versatility, if he could line up in the middle or he can line up on the outside, I'm all for it. I think Jalen Walker is a very talented
I don't hate it.
Dude.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I've read a lot of NFL scouts lately anonymously, and remember, take it all with a grain of salt, saying that of those middle linebacker types, Jihad Campbell out of Alabama is kind of had a better combine performance, is rising above Jalen Walker in some people's eyes. I don't think the Panthers need a dude that has to be locked into the middle the way Campbell probably does to succeed. So, I mean, you got to go in thinking that if we are locked on Walker, we probably can slide down as many as 10 spots and still have a reasonable shot to get it.
And that's what I'd like to see. I would love to see them have, because that was one of my bigger issues with the Brooks pick as well, was you didn't have to make that there.
Yeah.
Who was drafting him there?
I think best case scenario for the Panthers, and granted, this would probably push us to the very limits of being able to get a guy like Walker, is I think Shedeur Sanders is still going to be sitting there at number 8. I think the best thing that could happen for the Panthers is either the Seahawks
Yes.
or the Steelers decide, okay, we got to go get this guy. And there is a nice haul that maybe even includes another first rounder next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, do we know how the quarterback thirsty teams are going to act? No, it's hard to predict. And you're starting to hear more and more that there's a chance he slides down. But it's hard for those teams to help themselves, man. Like it just is. The QB thirsty teams are the ones that are out there like, oh, but he's right there. What if we wait and someone else gets him? Like,
right.
It's hard you have like that big FOMO. And I get it because you don't want to be the team that could have gone up and gotten that guy and didn't do it. And your fans are like, why didn't you trade up to or whatever? Like you don't want to be that team. And so, but then there's the flip side of, do you want to be the team that trades up and gets him and he sucks? So there's that too.
Right. I need to send a text to my buddy Andrew Filipponi at the Fan in Pittsburgh and see if we can get him to gin up the like uproar for we got to go get Shedeur Sanders and see if we can get everybody in the Steel City thinking that they trade with the Panthers. Maybe their old pal Dave Tepper will do them a solid and trade them that pick for a couple of 1s and a 2 and maybe a 3.
There you go. I mean, aren't they getting Aaron Rodgers though? So, I mean,
well, yeah, but Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there forever. I don't know. We're not vaccinated anymore. We're all going to be healthy.
I'm sorry. Can we imagine for a moment Aaron Rodgers and the Sanders family sharing a football team? Because Mike Tomlin might just walk out and quit mid-season.